Hello and welcome to this week's podcast and video blog. This is the first time I've done this. I hope it's going to work okay. My name is Richard Grannon of the SpartanLifeCoach.com, richardgrannon.com. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be answering a series of questions that have come to me about complex PTSD, overcoming narcissistic abuse, and how to move on with your life after an abusive relationship with a cluster B personality. If you want to ask a question yourself, put Spartan Life Coach and Forum into your favorite search engine, and the first result that comes up should be my forum. Go to the section marked Q&A and ask your question there, and I will get around to it as quickly as I can. Once I've done it and I've uploaded the answer, I will post that to you in a reply. You'll get an email that says the reply is done, and then you can go and listen to it, and that's that. Okay, let's get straight into this. The first question I'm going to answer is a pretty difficult one, but I'm going to do my best. And it's about being in a relationship with somebody who has CPTSD. The first part of the question is it possible to have a healthy relationship with someone with CPTSD if they're following up with therapy and the necessary steps to recover? And my answer to this would be yes. I think it is possible to have a healthy relationship with someone with CPTSD, provided they are following up with regular therapy. And by that, it needs to be at least once every 2 weeks. And they need to follow every single one of the steps that is necessary in order to recover. They can't be skipping anything, and they need to show a real commitment to change and to living in a different way, which means, can mean giving up things that they like, and that might be painful for them. So there are certain coping mechanisms, certain coping strategies that we all use when we're stressed, to deal with stress. Well, a lot of these have to be given up when you're actually seeking to recover from the emotional flashbacks that the coping strategies are there to protect you from. This could be alcohol, it could be drugs, it could be online gambling, it could be whatever it is that allows the person to try and self-medicate and control their state. So yes, it's possible, but it needs to be understood that this is very serious work, and it takes a huge amount of commitment from both people in the relationship. The research out there indicates that whether you're dealing with PTSD or CPTSD, it's probably best that the partner, the intimate partner of the client, is actively involved in some way in the therapeutic process, because you're the person who's going to deal with the worst that they have to offer in terms of their emotional flashbacks, and you'll be the focus of a lot of emotional flashbacks, and you could be the kindest, most considerate, most loving person in the world, but if that person has CPTSD and they go into an emotional flashback, it's you that's going to get targeted. Part 2 of this question: can being in a relationship with someone with CPTSD bring out codependent or fawning coping mechanisms, and is that just an unhealthy dynamic? Yes, being in a relationship can bring out codependent or fawning coping mechanisms. Being in a relationship with someone with CPTSD or PTSD can actually end up giving you CPTSD. If they're emotionally dysregulated and you're hanging around with somebody a lot of the time who's your intimate partner who is emotionally dysregulated, you will become emotionally dysregulated. So it actually can become a low-level traumatic experience. So all of the coping mechanisms, all of the trauma responses come out. If you're with somebody who has CPTSD, you could have a fight response and get rage attacks through being in contact with them. You could have a fawn response. You could have the flight response where you just want to run away, or you could have the complete freeze response where you start to just totally zone out and dissociate and disappear into a fantasy land. This is because being in a relationship with somebody with CPTSD is enormously stressful. Now you ask the question, is that an unhealthy dynamic? Well, if through being with somebody you're getting sicker, then yes, that's an unhealthy dynamic. You're not bringing them up in that case. They're bringing you both down. And yeah, that's a really, really unhealthy dynamic. Part 3, what is the best way to be supportive to someone with CPTSD? You need to have a lot of compassion by the bucket load, by the big bucket load. And you need to increase your understanding of CPTSD and the mechanism by which it operates. You need to be sensitive to what it is that triggers the person. And you need to work through deconstructing those triggers with that individual, and you need to work through deconstructing their emotional flashbacks. It's difficult work. It's very difficult work, even for professional trained therapists. So for a partner, it's a big job. It's a very, very large job, and it takes a lot of energy, and it can be completely exhausting. Because just when you think you've gotten hold of it, just when you think the person is getting better, they can relapse, they could attack you, they could start, all kinds of nasty things can come out. It must be understood that the cluster B personality disorders and cluster B patterns of behavior, whether histrionic, antisocial, borderline, or narcissistic, are a manifestation of complex post-traumatic stress. They're a manifestation of that. It's as a result of childhood trauma that people have developed these, either a full-blown personality disorder or a personality style, which is different to a full-blown personality disorder, but can be just as unpleasant for people who are on the receiving end. At the end of the day, you're not that person's therapist, and you need to draw that boundary and say, okay, well, I'm just another person. I'm not your therapist. There's only so much I can do. Trying to be somebody's therapist in a relationship is not healthy. The fourth part of the question, is it even possible to separate regular relationship issues with CPTSD-related issues? And honestly, does the distinction even matter if it is causing unhappiness? The short answer to that question is no. The distinction does not matter whether it's a regular relationship issue or a CPTSD-related issue. How does being with that person make you feel? Be rational, be reasonable. Don't do it on the basis of a bad weekend or a bad week. Plot a graph over time, if you like, inside your head of how being with that person has made you feel emotionally over time, and then draw your conclusions from that. If it's had an overall negative effect on you, then you need to acknowledge that and act accordingly, or a neutral effect or a positive effect. These are the kinds of questions that I would be asking. But is it possible to separate regular relationship issues from CPTSD-related issues? No, and that's not your fault. And that's what happens when you have CPTSD, or one person in the relationship has CPTSD. All the issues end up coming under that same banner, and you can never really know whether it's normal or not, because CPTSD is present, emotional dysregulation is present, and narcissistic controlling patterns of behavior are present, and truth is one of the first things that goes out the window. Objective truth disappears. You can get all kinds of things that can happen with somebody if they have CPTSD. They might not be full-blown narcissistic or borderline, but if they have those defensive patterns of behavior and they start lying or manipulating or doing things that are sly and underhand to get a result because they have decided inside their own heads that's the best thing to do, that's going to have an impact on the relationship that is damaging in the long run, and damages the trust within the relationship. So is it possible, you asked me, and I answered honestly, yes, it is possible. Is it likely? It depends on how bad the CPTSD is and how it manifests. Some people have CPTSD and it doesn't, CPTSD describes a hugely broad array of symptoms, hugely broad, and behavior patterns that manifest as a result of the person trying to cope with those symptoms. There are people who have CPTSD who do not attack their partner. That just isn't how it manifests for them. There are other people who have CPTSD and their issue, their core trauma is based in intimacy, and they will attack their partner. You could have a girl who's just extremely enraged with their father, all the way down since childhood, and at an unconscious level, without knowing it, that girl will attack her male partner as a form of punishing the father for the rest of their life, or swap the genders, and you can have exactly the same thing. You could have a man who's angry with his mum, and he's just going to perpetually attack his wife for the rest of his life, and that's coming out of the unconscious. It's just like an unconscious bitterness or anger that kind of bleeds out. Okay, on to the next question. Is there research that has been done that shows there's a link between children who've grown up in extremely religious environments or cults developing narcissistic personality disorder? And then you go on to ask, can a narcissist believe in God? Okay, yes, there has been research done. If you have access to academic papers like a website like JSTOR, and you put in religion and narcissism, you're going to get some very enlightening hits. If you just put it straight into Google, religion and narcissism, you will get a lot of hits for people online talking about it's clear, it's undeniable correlation between extreme religiosity, extreme whack job religiosity, and cult-like thinking. Now, why would that create NPD in children, and why does it just attract narcissists? Well, NPD as a personality disorder, it needs to be understood that it's rooted in childhood in an extreme traumatic break with reality. So anybody who is involved in a cult or cult-like activity or an extremely religious organization, on a daily basis, they're practicing an extreme break with reality. And these extreme religious people and the extreme cult people, it's a common theme that they are the chosen ones. They're the special ones. They're the ones who are going to get sailed away on the mothership. They're the ones who are the true believers in God and will be rewarded in heaven, and so on and so forth. So they're unique, they're special, and their struggle in life is a spiritual one that manifests at the cosmic level. It doesn't matter whether it's aliens or angels. It's the same thing. It's about being in contact with something that is more than this world, more than the ordinary, more than the everyday, that makes them special. So of course, it's an environment which is absolutely going to be extremely supportive of children developing NPD, not least because their parents, in order to be in that environment and to have the personality disorder or personality traits that would be attracted to that, will have extremely narcissistic traits and extreme cluster B traits themselves. So it's going to be highly traumatic for the child. They're probably going to be treated as an object whilst being idealized as something that makes the parent more special. And this is just the perfect psychological and emotional environment for narcissism to grow, as anybody who's followed the Spartan Life Coach channel for a while already knows. You then go on to ask, can a narcissist, by his own nature, believe in God? That's a bit of a philosophical question. Somebody who truly has NPD, yes, they can believe in God, but they probably believe that God is their equal, and that they have a special relationship with God, and God has a special purpose and a special message that is just for them. And as I'm saying this, you might have heard overtones of this in certain religious texts where there are prophets of various sects and religions who heard voices, and they heard the voice of God, and they believed that they were God's special messenger. This is an extreme manifestation of mental illness and of narcissism, that God has chosen me to be his vessel. So yes, they can believe in God, but they would probably believe that God was their equal, their mate, in their ear. You know, only me and God can really understand this thing. So the reason you're asking this question, I suspect, is because of the idea that the narcissistic personality cannot deal with a relationship that is vertical, where they're underneath and a higher authority is above them. And you would be right to think that. So what they do is, through magical thinking and through manifesting what is called a fetishist split, they make their relationship with God, they switch it inside of their own heads. So their relationship with God is like, God is my colleague, and it becomes a horizontal relationship. Fetishist splitting is key to what people with cluster B personality disorders do on a daily basis and have trained into themselves to do until it's completely unconscious. And it basically means, I know that something is not true, but I do not wish to know that that thing is not true, so therefore I will not know that it is not true. It's like a willful blind spot, a conscious formation of a blind spot. The narcissistic personality disordered individual is a black belt ninja in creating their own blind spots and then living in them happily. So the fetishist split here is, this is me still answering your question, can a true narcissist believe in God? No, of course they don't believe in God, on the one hand. On one side of the fetishist split, because, it's just not in their nature to believe in a higher authority. And yet at the same time, yes, they fervently and absolutely believe in God, but only because God is my colleague, God is my buddy, he's my equal, and he's in my ear telling me what to do, because I have a godlike status on earth, because I am special and unique and worthy of adoration, adulation, and being worshipped. So I hope that didn't sound like a political answer where I was being slippery and contradicting myself. It's not easy to understand the narcissistic personality, which is probably why you tuned into this podcast. You know very well it's not easy to understand the narcissistic personality. This kind of thing needs to be understood. They live in a split reality where they know and they don't know both at the same time. Like they know that they're being abusive. They know that they're being abusive, but they're hypnotized from childhood into not seeing that they're being abusive. So when you challenge them on it and they say, no, I didn't do that, do they believe that they didn't do it? Yes, they believe in that moment, in that split, that yes, they did. Yes, they didn't do it. Yes, I didn't abuse you. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't, which is why you start to go crazy if you're in a relationship with a truly narcissistic, personality disordered, malignant narcissist, personality disordered individual. On to the next question. Okie dokie. Here it is. Hi, Richard. I'm going through a divorce with a covert, vulnerable, narcissistic man. He went from deeply in love to done and discarded very quickly. I'm having a very hard time getting past this, even though the marriage lasted only 6 months, and he lived with me only 42 days across those 6 months. He's already on to a new supply. I have learned from your videos that I have a people-pleasing syndrome, and I sold myself too short in this marriage. Okay, you've not even got to your questions yet, and I already have a lot to say. Number one, I want to regain my self-worth. Where do I begin? Okay, you're asking the wrong question. If your headspace is in the pop psychology world, then you're gonna see your problem in a certain light and within a certain construct. But as the Slovenian philosopher Slavoj Žižek points out, if you want to look that up, it's Zizek, Slavoj Žižek, points out frequently the way we frame the question is part of the question. The way we frame the problem becomes problematic in itself. This is not an issue of you regaining your self-worth and where do you begin. Like, what am I going to tell you? You need to eat salads, get up in the morning, go for a jog and do some sit-ups. No, this is not a self-worth issue. If I go, without reading your other questions, if I go back to your paragraph where you describe going through a divorce with a covert, vulnerable narcissist, he went from deeply in love to done and discarded very quickly. You were only married 6 months, and then he got rid of you. You lived with him only 42 days, and he's already on to a new supply. And you say, I've learned from your videos that I have a people-pleasing syndrome, and I sold myself too short in this marriage. It's a little more than that. It's a little worse than that. But don't be scared by me saying it's a little worse than that. Because when you understand how it's worse, you can start to get better. You had to be a certain person and open to a certain relationship dynamic before you ever knew this guy's name, before he ever came close to being in your life. We all are pre-prepared for a narcissistically abusive relationship from childhood. 9 times out of 10, it's usually childhood, and 9 times out of 10, it's through an abusive, boundary-breaking relationship with a cluster B parent or parents or family unit or caregiver. So you were primed for this. You needed, in some way, you needed to do this. There's always an addictive quality to this. And what you're seeking to do at the unconscious level is you're seeking to resolve your childhood issues, most likely with your father, who probably has covert, vulnerable, narcissistic traits, and probably is an emotionally distant man, to see if you can prove that you're lovable by winning the love of somebody who can't give you love as an adult with this man. So in this weird way, in this very Freudian way, what we do is we try and win the love of the parent that we didn't receive in childhood through adulthood, but we've got to find somebody who mirrors the parent in order to solve that puzzle box, if that makes sense. So the problem is a little deeper than you thought. You say he's already onto a new supply. He discarded you quickly. Well, of course. I mean, that's what they do. Your brain is telling you it's about him. It's about him. It's about him. I need to look at what was in the relationship and see what he did. But really, what I would say to you is, it's about you. It's about your family of origin. It's about where you've come from. And it's about some core beliefs that you hold inside of yourself about how lovable you are, and about love itself, about what relationships are, based on the relationship you modeled in childhood, whatever your mother and father had. So your second question: how can I be self-assertive and avoid attracting narcissistic men? I have very low self-esteem. You have very low self-esteem, most likely because you received a lot of very negative messages about your value and your worth when you were very young. That's the most likely thing that is going on here. So we can't really resolve these issues and just give you something as an adult to do without going into the past and without going into the source of these self-esteem issues and the source of the belief, and looking at those core beliefs and then trying to pull them out. There's no other way around doing that. Question three, when will the pain stop? I know there's no easy way out. Minute by minute seems so difficult right now. The pain will stop when you heal and when your unconscious mind is satisfied that you're safe. The pain and the emotional flashbacks that you're getting now is the unconscious mind setting off a series of alarms saying, we're not safe, we're not safe, we're not safe. Something must be done. Something must be done. That's why you're in pain. You've got to get on a course. I have a bunch of courses for overcoming narcissistic abuse. If you want to try them, they have audio hypnoses in them. They have written exercises you can do. And I would say, get one of them, follow it to the letter, follow every instruction diligently, take it on as like a new training plan, a new discipline. Be doing it doing the exercises, doing the audios 2 or 3 times a day, every day for 2 weeks, and the pain will diminish. Or if you don't fancy that, you can get a coach or a counselor or a therapist who can help you deal with narcissistic abuse. Ideally, somebody who understands narcissistic abuse and complex PTSD. And if they don't, a good secondary option is somebody who can do inner child work that can help you access the wounds from childhood and to work with the inner child that is clearly in a very confused and vulnerable and hurt state right now. That's a good secondary option. Or, I could just say, just find a good therapist, just find a good counselor who doesn't do inner child work, who doesn't know anything about narcissistic abuse, but who can listen to you and who can talk through this stuff. A good therapist, a good counselor is worth their weight in gold. You then go on to say, I dread the moment when the divorce will be finalized, as it took me many years for me to find someone to marry. Is there a way I could shift my perspective so that it feels more like freedom rather than a loss? I'm 30 and I can't envision a life of loneliness. Dude, you're 30. Seriously, there's people who are going to be listening to this who are going to be shaking your head. You're young. You're lucky. You got out very, very early. I have clients of all ages. At least it was quick. At least you didn't have children with this guy. At least you didn't invest 20, 30 years of your life, as some of my clients have. You've got everything to fight for, and the game is not over. You can still very easily win it. So part of the problem is that right now, you probably don't even admit this to yourself because of those childhood wounds and because of the core beliefs that you have around how lovable you are or not lovable you are. You probably think that he was the best that you could get, and you probably don't value yourself, so you don't think you have any options. So really, there's no way around it. You've got to go back into the childhood, back into those core beliefs, try and heal those wounds from the past, and resolve those and change some of those negative core beliefs. I hope that helped. Okay. This is a long question. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm trying to pick up where I can go from. I met a woman 1.5 years after ending a relationship with my narcissistic wife. We actually watched some of your videos together. Oh, really? 1 year on, and after ignoring many red flags, I discover she is a poster girl borderline personality disorder waif. I know it's not up to me to diagnose, but it's all there, there's no doubt. My questions are as follows. Number one, can a BPD woman also be a covert narcissist? I'm a bit confused on this one. I asked this as when we watched your videos, she actually said to me, I hope you don't think I'm a narcissist. Some research done more recently, I think, I'm going to go out on a limb now, I might make an arse of myself, but I think it was 2008, I'll look it up, actually tried to speculate or prove that there really is no difference between borderline personality disorder and covert or vulnerable narcissism. I can't remember the exact research method. I think what they did was they took people who were confirmed, diagnosed by qualified professionals as borderline personality disordered individuals, and then they cross-tested them for tests of the major traits of fragile narcissism, and they got a hugely high result, like more than 80% positive. So it's starting to look a bit like our ideas about what borderline personality disorder are messed up, because you have something that I used to call benign borderline. There's no such thing as benign borderline. There are people who are misdiagnosed with borderline personality disorder and all they have is CPTSD. If they're not exploitative and they're not entitled and they're not lacking in empathy, it's not borderline. Borderline is definitely a form of narcissism. Of that, I am now completely convinced. It was Pete Walker and reading some of Sam Vaknin's articles that convinced me. But the research is being done right now, and we may find in the next DSM that they don't distinguish between fragile covert narcissists and borderlines. So you've hit on something there, and what you're suspecting, your intuition, is backed up by some peer-reviewed, published research. Question number two. I made the mistake of bringing up a few times after the relationship ended that I felt she suffered this. Oh, that she suffered from narcissism. Okay. Even though she rang me one night telling me I'm empty inside, I'm weird, I don't know who I am, she has now backtracked, denied this, and has basically done a 180. And I'm now the narcissist in her mind. Okay. There's more paragraphs to that question, but I'm just going to stop there and say, you've kind of told me everything I need to know. She rang you one night telling you that she feels empty inside and she's weird to herself. I don't know who I am. And then afterwards, she completely denied it and put it back on you and tried to say that you're the one who is the narcissist. Okay, so this is classic for borderline personality disorder and for vulnerable narcissism, that they feel empty inside and they don't know who they are. Another way of understanding a borderline or a covert narcissist is just to say the person is just a narcissist, but the mask slips more. They're more emotionally dysregulated, and their strategies for garnering narcissistic supply are not as effective. So what I started to say was the difference between a covert narcissist and an overt narcissist is as follows. The overt narcissist thinks that they're amazing and the world agrees with them. The covert narcissist wants to be amazing, believes shamefully in the core of their being that they're amazing, believes and doesn't believe at the same time, fetishist split again, but the world does not agree with them. That's why they have to engage in covert narcissistic strategies, because they're not that alpha male or alpha female that everybody loves. They're not if they're cerebral, the top of their academic field, or if they're somatic, completely gorgeous and beautiful and receiving all, just checking my microphone is on, receiving all the narcissistic supply their greedy little hearts desire. So that's why they become covert, because they have to sneak around to get what they want, and they're also ashamed of their own grandiosity. So this woman sounds like she's vacillating between openness, telling you what she really feels inside, which is nothing, numbness, vulnerability, being extremely ashamed of her own feelings of grandiosity. So she does this, she's bouncing, she's emotionally dysregulated, she's up, she's down. The covert narcissist and the borderline are extremely emotionally dysregulated. And what's causing their emotional dysregulation is when they have narcissistic supply, they go into narcissistic elation, they feel full, the parasite, the tick, the leech is full. When they lose their narcissistic supply, because they're not very good at securing it in a way that is constant and enough for them, they get depressed. They have narcissistic depletion, and then you have a depressed narcissist. So when she said to you, when she called you and said, I'm empty inside, I'm weird, I don't know who I am, that was the vulnerable, depleted narcissist who had lost her supply and felt like she needed you. After she had that conversation with you, she went to sleep. She woke up the next day, she remembered it. She went into extreme shame. She felt extremely ashamed of having been so open with you. And that's why she completely denied it and attacked you. So her calling you a narcissist is nothing more than saying tennis, you fire a good serve at me, and I'm like, shit, that was a really good serve. I need to put you back on the back foot. So I just hammer the ball straight back at you to give me time to think. It's a defensive strategy. Or if you're boxing and you punch me and I go, fuck, that was a good one, I don't want him to follow up with a series of punches that is going to put me on the canvas. I'll just start jabbing blindly. I'll take the fight to you so that you can't think straight. It's like military strategy. And that's why she's accused you. And she said, oh, that absolutely didn't happen. Shame, guilt, shame, guilt. I can't believe I let him see the inner me. I'm such an idiot. She's probably talking to herself, whatever her name is. Like, we'll call her Sarah. Sarah, why do you do that? You fucking idiot. Now he knows. Oh my God, we're going to lose everything. Let's attack him. And she says, I think you're a narcissist. She doesn't. She doesn't think you're a narcissist. It's just a way of putting the ball back in your court. Okay, I'm going to continue reading your question. She and I are no contact now for 2 months. I'm giving up ever bringing this up again if we ever get on speaking terms, as she has to know this is why she feels the way she has all her life. Do you think it's in her and my best interest to just drop it, as she is an adult and has to make her own choices regardless of how much I care? I think it's in your best interest to distance yourself from this person. You've gone back to talking like, oh, maybe I can tell her, maybe I can reason with her, show her what she's really like and bring her to someone. No, dude, please. There's no understanding. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. She doesn't want to understand what she's really about. She just wants what she wants from you and from other people. That's it. She's just a wanting thing. I know that it hurts and it might seem sadistic or cruel me telling you that, but it's better that you sit there right now feeling glum and depressed and hurt over what I just said, experiencing that pain in the short term so that you can be saved from the long-term suffering that you will certainly engage in if you continue with a relationship with somebody who behaves in this way. This is now what I would call a recurrent pattern of behavior, permanent, pervasive, and personal. It's her, dude. She's not, like, I'm just assuming everything you've told me is completely true. Anybody who does this is not well. Okay, question number 3, grieving in reverse. How much do you know about this, or is there much weight to it? Is it just a repression of emotions? Then as time goes on, the dam just overflows and pain hits them when we have worked through our grief? I've never heard of grieving in reverse, so I have no useful input. I don't know what that means. Sorry. Question number 4. I read that they seem to jump into new relationships very quickly. No, they don't seem to. They absolutely do. Like, please understand, boys and girls, anybody listening, the narcissistic person, the cluster B personality, is a codependent. If you obey internet law and the internet narrative and you don't look at the academic research, you can get all kinds of funny ideas in your head. People have created this false dichotomy with the codependent is the black sheep scapegoat fawn type who's going to be the enabler for the nasty, mean predator. No. They're all codependents. We're all like the cluster B personality they're our cousin. They're not that far away from us, but we are all coming under the umbrella term of a codependent. A codependent needs another human being in order to validate their sense of self. So what we do at one end of the scale, and the scapegoat, empath, whatever you want to call it, is we enable the other person so they feel good, because that gives us our sense of self. The codependent, I need another human being there to feel anything. On the other end of the spectrum, they just abuse. They don't enable and lift them up. They squash them down and step their jackboot onto their necks in order to feel okay. So, of course, a person who's an absolute addict to narcissistic supply and to being in intimate relationships, of course, they're going to rush out as soon as they split up with you and get into another relationship. In fact, when they feel like they're losing their hold over you, or when they feel like the relationship is ending, they sit around and plot in a Machiavellian way, who can I get with next? It was actually a former girlfriend of mine from a very long time ago who was talking about my ex, who was a true full-blown narcissist who really, really messed my head up for a few years. And she said, "Oh, she's a monkey then." I said, "Well, what do you mean she's a monkey?" Because I described this distant ex-girlfriend from years ago I barely ever speak to. I described the relationship. She said, "Oh, she's a monkey then." But what's a monkey? She said, "Well, a monkey, they don't let go of the last vine that they're holding on to until they've got hold of the next vine, because it's not safe." So she would have, if she seemed to get into a relationship very, very quickly, or anybody listening to this, if you've noticed how quickly they get into the next relationship, they were probably planning that for months. It's chess. It's the next move for them in their power struggle, because they must, above all else, secure narcissistic supply. They will even get with people they have barely any interest in and are not even physically attracted to, if it means that they don't spend 1 day, 1 second, 1 hour on their own whilst you're potentially with somebody else. A borderline person I know very well once said to me, "Love is just a game of winners and losers." That's how they see relationships. That's how they see human intimacy. That's how they see emotions and vulnerability. They're not capable of normal emotions. It's just not there for them. So, yeah, you read that they seem to jump into new relationships very quickly. I would assert, sir, that they must jump into a new relationship very quickly. Because they're an addict. She's addicted to crack. What do you think? She's just going to take a crack sabbatical for 3 months? No, she needs more crack. And if you're not giving it to her, she feels 100% entitled to get it from wherever she can. That could be your best friend, your brother. There is no boundary that will not be transgressed to secure that supply. So you read that somewhere they jump into new relationships very quickly, and you said here 5 months on, and she hasn't. This goes against her past, as she never seemed to be without a partner for very long. Do some BPD women fill that void with friends or other activities? Is this against the norm? How do you know that she hasn't? Is that because that's what she's telling you? This is a difficult one. When people ask me questions like this, I had somebody do it at a seminar. The woman came up to me at a seminar, very, very sweet lady, and she said, "You say that all narcissists, to be overt narcissists, they have to have been abandoned in some way in childhood, but also spoilt in some way in childhood." And she said, "I know 100% that my ex-boyfriend was not spoilt in childhood." And I said, "How do you know 100% that he wasn't spoilt in childhood?" "He told me." I'm just going to let that silence linger a couple of seconds longer. Yeah. Okay, so you're going to take information from a person you've just told me is disordered. If she still, obviously, you say you've split up, but it's 5 months on and she hasn't moved on, so I presume you're in contact with her. Anybody listening to this right now is going to be going, "Oh, dude." I mean, dude as in not like, "Oh, you're an idiot," but dude, cringing, going, "We all did that," but you really, you can't be in contact with her and be asking her whether she's seeing somebody else and then accept an answer from her, which is, "Yeah, no, I'm not seeing anybody else." She's going to project the image to you that she needs to project to you in order to get from you what she needs to get from you. It sounds like she's playing a game with you right now where she wants you to see her as a little bit better of a human being than she is, and to cast doubt in your mind about what kind of relationship you were just in. And so far, it seems to be working. Is it likely that somebody who has done the things that you've told me has just gone 5 months with no relationship, no supply whatsoever? It's really, really, really unlikely, extremely unlikely, but not impossible. I guess I have to say it's not impossible. If she's telling the truth, and why she's telling you anything right now about her relationships, I don't know, and you should appreciate that it's a bit sick that you're having that conversation. Is it against the norm? Yes, it would be. Last question from this gentleman. This isn't a question, just a thank you for all your free advice. It's helped me to understand a lot about my past relationships. I'm glad that it's helped. Okay, folks. Tempest flipping Fugit. I'm going to answer one more question, and then we are done for this week's podcast. The question is, after watching the videos in your class, I'm wondering if I have to be very careful with the therapist I choose to help recover from CPTSD. What are some questions I should be asking when I call them? So far, I'm going to ask if they've successfully treated someone with CPTSD in the past. The reason I ask is that my previous therapist continued to treat me, but avoided talking about what caused my CPTSD. I don't think she was trained for it, so she didn't want to unearth what I have buried. Still, her ego was too big to refer me to someone who could actually help. So we have 5 minutes left. Finding a good therapist who can help you with CPTSD. Not all therapists and counselors are going to acknowledge that CPTSD exists. That doesn't mean you shouldn't get with them. You can also talk in terms that they do understand or are trained for, like childhood trauma or PTSD. You could say, I'm suffering from, flashbacks because of PTSD from childhood trauma. If they're a good therapist, as I said earlier, if they're a good therapist, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether they are followers of the Spartan Life Coach YouTube, as nowadays I'm happy to report many therapists are. They don't just follow the YouTube channel and learn from me and apply it to their clients. They're actually referring clients to my videos to understand more about this type of thing. You could do that. You could try and do that, but some therapists would be really put off. Some of my videos, I'm wearing a vest. And I swear, and it's really, really difficult. Rather than focusing on the CPTSD, focus on getting a good therapist who's qualified, who can help you to resolve childhood trauma. You don't need to get into a head-to-head argument over CPTSD and whether they'll acknowledge it and whether it exists. And if you ask whether they've successfully treated someone with CPTSD in the past, you're going to narrow down your potential pool of coaches, counselors, and therapists a lot, because most of them won't even acknowledge that it exists and know what you're talking about. In 2009, I went for therapy, and I went through a whole load of people that I found on the internet, picked out my top 10, and then I called the top 10 people. And I looked for stability, emotional stability, a boundariedness, a sense that maybe I could build rapport with that person. But, not that I got on with them in a jovial, haha sort of a way, but that I felt and that I intuited that the person would be safe and useful and sensible enough and mature enough to lead me through what I needed to be led through. And that's what I recommend you should do when you're looking for a therapist or a counselor. Okay, guys, that's the end of the video blog and the podcast. I hope you found it useful. Please head over to the Spartan Life Coach forum if you want to ask any questions and have me answer them. If you've got any feedback, then let me know there on the forum. And I look forward to speaking to you all soon. Thanks again.